Refusing to help my neighbor move because I had already made plans for the day? I've been going back and forth on whether I handled this situation correctly, and I'm hoping to get some perspective from Reddit. Here's the story. I, 29M, live in a charming, tight-knit neighborhood where people generally get along well and help each other out when needed. It's a place where most of us know each other by name and can have friendly chats over the fence or while walking our dogs. It's not quite the kind of place where everyone's best friends, but there's a sense of community that makes it feel like home. For context, I've been living in this neighborhood for about 3 years. I'm on friendly terms with my neighbors, but I wouldn't say I have a deep personal connection with all of them. I make an effort to be helpful and sociable, but I also maintain a balance with my personal space and time. Last Friday evening, I received a call from my neighbor, Tom, early 40s. Tom and his family had recently purchased a new home a few blocks away, and they were in the process of moving out of their old place. Tom had asked me if I could help him move some furniture the following Saturday morning. I was initially taken aback by the request because I had made prior plans for that day. A close friend of mine, Emily, who I hadn't seen in over 2 years, was coming to town. We had planned a day of catching up and reconnecting. It was something I had been looking forward to for a long time. When Tom first called, I explained to him that I had already committed to spending time with Emily and that I wouldn't be able to help with the move. I apologized for not being available and assured him that it wasn't a reflection of how I felt about him as a neighbor. Tom seemed to take my response in stride at first, but then he pressed the issue further. He mentioned that he didn't have anyone else available to help him and was feeling stressed about the move. He told me that he was worried he wouldn't get everything done in time for the new tenant who was moving into his old apartment. His voice had a hint of desperation, and I could tell he was genuinely stressed about the situation. I reiterated that I was really sorry but simply couldn't change my plans. I suggested that he could consider hiring professional movers or perhaps reach out to another neighbor who might be free. I even suggested that he could try posting in a local community group online, as sometimes people are willing to lend a hand. Despite my suggestions, Tom continued to push. He said he thought we were closer than that and that it was disappointing that I wouldn't help him out when he really needed it. He implied that I should be willing to adjust my plans for the sake of being a good neighbor. This was where I started to feel conflicted. On one hand, I genuinely felt for Tom and understood the stress he was under. Moving can be a monumental task, especially when you don't have enough help. On the other hand, I had made plans that I couldn't change. Emily had traveled a long distance to see me, and I felt that honoring that commitment was important. The more Tom insisted, the more I felt pressured, and I began to question whether I was being unreasonable. Was I being a bad neighbor for not rearranging my plans? Was there a way I could have balanced both commitments? Saturday arrived, and I went ahead with my plans to meet Emily. We spent the day catching up, talking about old times, and enjoying each other's company. It was a day filled with laughter, reminiscing, and catching up on life. Emily and I had a great time, and I was glad I had made the effort to see her. Later in the evening, I decided to take a walk with my dog to clear my head and get some fresh air. As I was walking through the neighborhood, I saw Tom struggling with a load of boxes. His face looked exhausted and frustrated. He was alone, and it was evident that he was having a hard time managing everything by himself. When Tom saw me, he approached and said hello. His tone was noticeably curt, and I could tell he was still upset about the situation. He mentioned how challenging the day had been and expressed his disappointment that I hadn't been able to help. He told me that he had been working all day and was nowhere near finished. I tried to empathize and apologized again for not being available. I told him I hoped things would improve soon and offered to help in any small way I could at that moment. Tom thanked me, though his gratitude seemed half-hearted. The conversation ended on a somewhat awkward note, and I continued my walk, feeling conflicted. In the days that followed, things remained tense between Tom and me. I began to notice that Tom was more distant and less friendly when we crossed paths. There was an unspoken tension, and it was clear that my refusal to help had affected our relationship. I felt guilty about the situation, even though I had done what I believed was necessary to honor my prior commitments. A few days later, I ran into another neighbor, Linda, who was aware of the move and the fallout. Linda and I had a friendly chat, and she brought up the situation. She mentioned that Tom had been talking about how disappointed he was with me and how he felt let down by my refusal to help. Linda tried to offer some perspective, suggesting that Tom's reaction was partly due to his stress and exhaustion from the move. She also mentioned that while Tom's feelings were valid, he might have overreacted in his disappointment. Linda's comments were reassuring but didn't completely alleviate my sense of guilt. As time passed, I started to reflect more on the situation and whether I could have handled things differently. Did I make the right choice by sticking to my plans with Emily? Should I have found a way to help Tom, even if it was just for a short period? Or was I justified in prioritizing my personal commitments over helping a neighbor in need? I thought about the suggestions I had made to Tom, including hiring movers or reaching out to other neighbors. In hindsight, I wondered if I could have been more proactive in helping him find a solution rather than just offering advice. At the same time, I also recognized the importance of maintaining personal boundaries and honoring commitments. It was a delicate balance between being a good neighbor and managing one's own schedule and priorities. A few weeks later, Tom reached out to me with a message. He asked if we could have a chat, and I agreed. We met at a local coffee shop, and Tom started by apologizing for his behavior. He admitted that he had been overwhelmed by the move and had taken his frustration out on me unfairly. He said he appreciated my previous suggestions and realized he should have handled the situation better. Tom explained that he had been under a lot of pressure and that it wasn't entirely my fault that the move had been difficult. He acknowledged that he had overreacted and that his disappointment was partly due to his own stress and exhaustion. I appreciated Tom's apology and explained that I had been conflicted about the situation as well. I assured him that I valued our relationship as neighbors and that I was glad we could talk things through. We both agreed to move forward and put the incident behind us. After our conversation, things started to improve. Tom and I were able to rebuild our rapport, and the tension between us gradually dissipated. I continued to be friendly and supportive as a neighbor, and Tom seemed to be more relaxed and approachable. The experience taught me a lot about communication and empathy. It reinforced the importance of maintaining open lines of dialogue and addressing conflicts directly rather than letting them fester. It also highlighted the need for balancing personal commitments with community responsibilities. Looking back, I still wonder if there was a better way to handle the situation. Could I have managed my plans with Emily differently? Was there a way I could have offered more practical assistance to Tom without sacrificing my own commitments? Ultimately, I believe that maintaining personal boundaries and honoring prior commitments is important, but so is being supportive and understanding as a neighbor. It's a complex balance, and each situation is unique. While I stand by my decision to prioritize my plans with Emily, I also recognize the value in being empathetic and finding ways to support others in need when possible. So, Reddit, refusing to help my neighbor move because I had already made plans for the day? I'd love to hear your thoughts and any advice you might have on handling similar situations in the future. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed these Reddit stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.